back.
I think I'm trying to get my audio and video working well, but I apologize for my late notice last week. The snow pushed back some plans, and some people were in the air on how they were going to reschedule, and they kind of called me and said, "Okay, we're gonna roll now." I said, "Well, okay, I'll see y'all in a few hours." But I apologize for my late notice last week, but I always look forward to being with you, man. Always, always. So, yeah, get this together. So, how's everybody?
I'm doing great.
Me too.
If I told you the truth, you might think I was bragging.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just
I
messing.
like that one, Fred. I got to remember that one.
Yeah,
If I
go
told you the
ahead.
truth, you think I was bragging. I got to remember that one.
Yeah.
That's good. It's good to hear.
Like Jeff, before we came on the call, I was telling Jeff I'm trying to find some good bait to go fishing with me. And then Jeff gave me another thing. As a gardener, he said I need to find some good soil to plant. I said, okay, bait and good soil. So I learned
Good
that this
comment.
morning about I had my baits, getting my bait because I like fishing. And I'm learning how to go out now and plant some good soil. So I'm going to start that this week. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, let's start with a little review. We've been circling the wagon on this Matthew. Kind of sound familiar, huh, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know why you even had to say it. I knew what we were going to do.
Yeah. We've been circling the wagon on this Matthew, and I'm not I really want to try to get us to a point where we can ask questions about what we learn. And so that's what I hope to do today. And just want to see how we've been reviewing and internalizing, right? That's our goal. Yeah. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 5. I'm trying to get my little audio or my digital Bible to pull up, but for some reason it's slow this morning. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. If somebody will, go ahead and read Matthew 5.
I can go ahead and read it. You want us to read it?
All right, you got it memorized, so let's go.
I do. I say, when Jesus saw the crowd, he went up on a mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and began to teach them, saying, that's Matthew 5, 1 and 2 out of the EASB version.
Okay. And we've developed the title for our lesson. Anybody remember that?
The expectations of the rabbi, the disciples, and the crowd,
And the
according
crowd.
to Matthew 5, 1 and 2, NASB.
So I think Jeff mentioned before a couple of weeks ago is he made a powerful statement. He said, I think he mentioned something about if the students had better expectations, there may be better outcomes in our classrooms today. And that's true, and that's true. I totally agree with that. And so what we want to do is start with these expectations. What we're learning as disciples is to understand what like in our culture. So these aren't the only expectations, but these are some of what we've just only mentioned one of the main expectations of each. And so there's a perspective. A student has an expectation of his teacher, and we talked about that. But the teacher has expectations of the students. And even the bystanders have expectations of both. You know, some people are professional bystanders. You know, they're always gathering to see what the main characters of something do, all right, or are doing. And so as we read our Bible, we notice Jesus often drew crowds, often. And there were mixed results. You know, some followed, you know, some continued to beg, some criticized. But there were mixed results. Some followed to see if it's true, to make a decision on whether or not they wanted to follow. Some heard about all the good things other people got and wanted to go and see if I can get something good out of it. And some of them just said, hey, you know, whatever I have going on, he's drawing all the attention away from me. So let me go be a thorn in his flesh and see where I can trip him up eventually and get rid of it. So mixed results, but nonetheless, we're looking at some expectations of sincere and heartfelt relationships. Anybody remember and I think I mentioned it already, but the three characters in this text.
Whether it was the rabbi, the disciples, and the crowd.
Okay. All right. So, and what was the expectations of each? Anybody remember those?
Well, the rabbi expected his disciples to repeat his lesson 100 times or more until they was able to repeat it for themselves.
Excellent.
And that was one.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the disciples expected the rabbi to repeat the lesson enough times until they were able to repeat it for themselves. And then the crowd, they expected the rabbis, the disciples, if the crowd was not present to hear the rabbi's lesson, that the rabbi's disciples would be able to repeat the rabbi's lesson to them when necessary.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right. And so again, when we put it in perspective, if we look at the main expectations, that's what we would lean towards. Somebody had a comment or somebody
I
else?
did.
Okay.
So what we saying is that there was a gathering of a bunch of people, and Jesus was an invited guest. How did the crowd, like you were just saying, the crowd would form around him for different reasons, right? So I wonder how they heard about it in those days. With just word of mouth? Somebody say he gonna be down in Memphis this week, gonna be in Ruston next week. How did that go?
Yeah, that's a good question, Will. You know, one of our previous texts, you know, there was an encounter, and I think from that encounter, people gathered, or there was a gathering, and they continued to pursue or follow him as he went to this mountain area, and lo and behold, there was a lot of rumbling about things he had done, you know, and always maybe different, but it's kind of hard to imagine exactly how the crowd knew where to go to find him. I can imagine that, you know, I'm in my neighborhood today, 3 blocks over, I may not know what's going on. So that's a great question. One that's probably still up for debate. But nonetheless, I would imagine wherever he started to engage, it was probably in a crowded place or a public place. Yeah, I see what you put, Chris. I know that's where he is. I guess he was trying to say, why would the crowd even go to the synagogue to hear him? Is that right, Will?
Yeah, why would they even go there? But you know, I want to see Beyonce because I think she dance good and look good, right? So I would get her to go see her, right? Uh, but now this man here, back in those days, like the Greek people would speak like Plato, Socrates, and stuff. Uh, I mean, it was always a crowd gathering for one reason or other, you know. So,
Yeah.
so I'm what I'm saying. I think it was just a habit of people to do those things
Yeah.
to get around and hear a speaker.
Well, I would imagine that day. Come on.
Well, I was just going to say, I can't speak of Jesus' times, but we do know in the Old Testament that there were always messengers that were sending messages back and forth. And when you read the biography of George Whitefield, it says that his reputation preceded him. So, for example, I think the people there probably already had heard the scuttlebutt that there's this guy from Nazareth that can heal people and bring them back from the dead, and what he says no one else has ever said. And John the Baptist, which we all know, has already told us he is the Lamb of God. And so I think his reputation probably preceded him. And then in the book about George Whitefield, it says that people would be plowing in the field and a messenger would come by and say that George Whitefield's going to show up in downtown Philadelphia, and they would just quickly drop the plow, jump on the mule, and run into town to see him, and 50,000 would get together to hear him speak, even though it was, quote, not planned. And so I can only imagine if that was happened to George Whitefield in the 1700s, I would imagine that Jesus, his reputation had already gone out. And man, when people heard he showed up, it was big news, and they came barreling out of their houses to go and hear him and see him.
We have to remember too, they went to the temple 3 times a day to pray, and Jesus went to the temple, so it was not like he was just an obscure figure that showed up every now and then. He was definitely part of he was just part of the makeup.
Culture.
Yeah, I mean, and of course they went to the synagogue every Sabbath, so yeah, he was probably not hard to spot.
And the anticipation in their day, in their culture, of entertainment in certain things. If you heard about a famous teacher, you would probably gather in those places they frequented. And when they did come, you would notice, or everybody else would already be anticipating, kind of like Jeff's narrative. And then I can imagine someone running back to the villages and the communities saying, here he is, he's here, come and see. People would probably have already been prepared. So yeah. But nonetheless, the crowds gathered. And Jesus' response to the crowd is what I think we should focus on and pay attention to. And eventually we're going to get there. But I think the response he often had to crowds and the words and the messages he used in when crowds gathered is yeah. You had something else?
Well,
John?
it looks like there's a progression here. Jesus saw and Jesus went. So it's almost like a cause and effect. He saw the crowds, so he went to the mountain. And then the next cause and effect is he sat down and his disciples came to him. So it looks like in both cases, what he saw, and then he sat down. It caused when he saw the crowds, he acted by going up the mountain. When he sat down, the disciples acted, and they came to him. Is that a fair? Have I gone too far, or is that what the passage tells us?
Yeah, actually, that's what, the historical content around it reveals to us as well. It wasn't a casual dictation Matthew put in there. It was from his cause and effects, and he saw something, and immediately, either at that moment or sometime after, the disciples gathered and realized this wasn't casual or unintentional. This was strategic, and they began to see a pattern that was repeated in their culture, and they noticed that Jesus was actually in line or following this pattern as well, and that created signals or responses. So yes, yeah. All right. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna tap into that. All of what we're doing is really trying to give ourselves a fair chance at interpretation. If I hadn't mentioned that before, the purpose of us making sure we understand what we're learning now in what we would call the pre-lesson is to understand a lot that they already knew in their culture. So when we look at the verse and we interpret it, we can actually try to come as close to the true interpretation as possible. Because we'll have tools to do that, and that's what we're doing. So that's why understanding what we covered is important, so we can come back and utilize this information when it matters most. If that makes sense. All right. Well, let's keep reviewing. So we saw the expectations. All right, and in those expectations, they reveal responsibilities. Anybody remember the responsibilities?
Yeah, the rabbi had a responsibility to teach. The disciples had a responsibility to learn what the rabbi was teaching, and the crowd had the responsibility of pursuing.
So we see those responsibilities: teach, pursue, teach, repeat / learn.
Correct. Yes,
and
sir.
Pursue.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Because the repeating represents the learning.
Correct.
All right. So yeah. All right. But the pursuing becomes important to those who have a desire to learn. So being in the crowd was a great thing if your goal was pursuit to get close to a possible or opportunity for learning. And that was important in their culture. That's what we leave out. We leave out the fact that, in this culture, little boys and little girls grew up in hopes to be labeled this lifelong learner called a disciple. Because when you committed to it, it was a life expectation. Is that I wouldn't be a learner in a university for 4 years. I wouldn't be a student until I got out of high school. But when I committed to this, it was something I would do with my life. So I gave my life to this. That's the difference. That's a big difference, which shaped the way they learn, because they gave their life to this cause or this commitment, which is a big difference for us. But we're followers of Christ. So as we convert and confess our faith and belief in Jesus, become children of God, what's next? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. What's next? And what is the purpose of my learning? Is it for me? because that was another difference in this responsibility of a disciple. You know, they weren't just repeating lessons to repeat lessons. They were repeating lessons to learn them. But they weren't just learning lessons to learn lessons. They was learning lessons for a purpose. You know, it was a purpose. And so they had a hope that I could learn this lesson in order to do something with it. And again, you guys are disciple makers and learners. You know, they were hoping to learn these lessons so they can teach them to the next generation. They felt that, like that was my responsibility. Is if I don't learn it, who in my generation will? And I'm not going to expect somebody else to do it. So I step up and take the responsibility to do it. And then who's going to pass it on to the next generation? I hope we all will, but I'm not going to take the chance that somebody else is going to do it. I'm going to lean into the responsibility and commit to it to make sure it gets done. And that's what God needs today. All right. That's what God needs. That's what he needs from us. All right. That's what he needs from us.
So in other words, being a disciple has given me a purpose in life. But I wasn't just created to I was created for a purpose. It was a reason God created me. And being a disciple is the best reason that I can have for this life and the life hereafter.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair statement?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
You know, because before I learned about this disciple and thing, I was searching for a purpose. Now I have a purpose. Now I have a desire. I'm not just picking up the Bible to learn it and then say I know this and that, and I can outsmart you and dim him. I have a purpose in my life because of this disciple lesson that I'm learning.
Yes. I'll tell a quick story. When I was in college, you know, you develop special bonds with people, and man, there was a group of guys from the inner city. For some reason, this college put all of the inner city people who had to take the remedial courses. None of y'all don't know what that is. Y'all didn't have to do that when you went to college, but for some reason they put all the people who had to take the remedial courses in the inner city in on the same floor in this particular dorm, right? but the people who took the remedial courses just so happened to be most of the inner city people, urbanized inner city people going to college. And we developed this bond, but we created a lot of problems for that college. and years later, you know, one of the guys passed away a few weeks ago, and you know, we all went to the funeral, and you know, his wife, you know, knew about this particular bond this group of kids kept throughout the years. And guys always look at me as an absentee friend or member of this group, right? I was away from prison for a while, and get out of prison, I commit my heart to Christ, and when they gather, I don't show up, you know, for various reasons, lifestyle changes, and so we're at this after the funeral, we just kind of gathering and having conversations, and of course it came up, okay, man, you don't hang with us, you don't show up. I said, man, you know, and they talking through the old war stories and stuff like that, and I said, man, we had a lot of fun. It was something special about us, but here's the difference, man. All of that stuff, man, we were living without purpose, and right now, I'm a purpose-driven person, and so, man, that's kind of where I spend my time, and if it conflicts with what's going on over living for purpose and just, man, reminiscing, I'm gonna choose purpose. And I shared a brief testimony. Most of the guys knew where I came from and what I've been through. And I just looked around and said, hey, you know, man, you guys have made some success in your life, but what's next? Now you're so successful, all you can do is talk about what you did at school. So where's your purpose? We got to live for purpose. And I began to explain, why I went on my mission trips and do the things I do. And my point of it is, man, this gives me purpose. And I'm excited about it because I hear stories and see people who don't have purpose in life who are successful. Nice houses, family, kids all grown, and now they're just kind of sitting back reminiscing, waiting on the sun to set in life. And that ain't us. Man, God give us something and to look forward to, and leaving the most important legacy to the next generation is why I do this. What we're learning is the most important legacy we can leave into the next generation. So when the sun does set on my life, I know what I've done in my life doesn't die with me. So yeah. And that's kind of how I close my conversation off with those men is, hey, one thing I can say is what I'm doing now, when I die, it ain't going to stay with me. It's going to be left behind. So yeah.
Great testimony, sir. I reckon I can make that same testimony, about my friends of the past. You gave me. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was just going to say that I know that we are supposed to learn and repeat, but we also have to learn, repeat, walk it out, so that we find others that will do the repeating after us.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, that, if we just repeated, it would be more like just a full-time evangelist. We're just saying what Jesus said. But what we're supposed to do is take what Jesus said, walk it out in such a way that we will get others to do likewise. And of course, that is a phenomenal purpose, and I think that's where Will and myself and the rest of us are. It's not just to learn and repeat; it's to learn, repeat, and get others to do likewise.
Yeah, that's
that would be called our what? Yeah. What would that be called? Our Holocaust.
Well, the Holocaust, and it's multiplication. And
yes,
and if our goal in mind is not multiplication, I think that we've lost the purpose, because those disciples didn't just repeat for that generation; they found others that would do likewise, and that's why we're here, is because they did more than they weren't just members of the crowd.
Yeah.
They learned, repeated, and found others that would do likewise.
Reproduce.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Says to reproduce.
Right.
That's right, Chris.
Right. And the thing that I'm learning also, okay, is now those guys were not afraid to die. I mean, all of them died a horrible death, except for John. So we had to get past this fear of death, and I admit that took me some time to get past that, right? And when I say get past the fear of death, it's also I get past the fear of somebody's. I might provoke you not to anger, but I ain't gonna let you talk about my Jesus and just say anything, So it's I don't need I have no fear of going out teaching this word. That's my point, Case.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff.
I agree with that, Kay. I appreciate you sharing that story. And I think that having a purpose is for all of us I think that's what really drives us when we start really thinking about why we're here and what's God put us here to do, and this obedience part of following him is kind of what you're doing. You're trying to be obedient to what he's calling you to do and the purpose for which you feel like he created you to be here for.
Yes.
And the obedience part is the hard part for all of us. We can learn and we can repeat, but can we obey what he put on each of our hearts to do here while we're here? So I appreciate you sharing that. That was good. I hope it makes a difference. What you're hoping is that people you come across and you share the purpose that God's put in your heart, that it lights a fire in theirs, and they hear you and they grow.
Yes. Yeah.
Go toward him.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate it, Dan. Yeah, that's the hope, is like when you leave, like we say, you can't unsee what you saw, or sometimes you can't unhear what you hear until you forget it. But at moments when God brings it back to remembrance, we hope that it'll cause them to start wrestling with their life, right? And that's my prayer, for each of those men, is that God will begin to use that to draw him unto himself. I got another short testimony. I know John knows. I met with Jefferson yesterday. John, man, he just since the snowstorm, we were supposed to meet up. Snowstorm happened. We had to push the meeting back. Man, week after the snowstorm, roads are icy. We pushed the meeting back. The week after, the roads icy. I'm juggling things, catching up. So I gotta reschedule the meeting. And we finally met yesterday. My point of it is he never stopped. He never stopped saying, hey, what about this? Can we do this? All right. Are you gonna be able to get out here? And I appreciate it. And I just told him yesterday, man, I appreciate you not giving up on us trying to get together, because it was over a month. Most people have been like, forget it. But when we met, he asked about this group, and I said, yeah, I'm still meeting with this group of guys, a special group of guys on Fridays. I said, yeah, we still meeting. He said, man, I said, man, just about everybody in that group is still here. He said, okay, wow. And the next thing he was really just kind of talking through, man, just God wrestling with him about his purpose. He's a youth pastor at a big church here in Memphis, doing God's work. But he's just been wrestling about whether or not it's purposeful, or how to make it purposeful, right? Because people are showing up. I told a joke about y'all, so I might as well confess. He said, man, I got a bunch of young artistic people. Most of the people in my group are artistic. I said, Jefferson, most of the group of people on Friday are artistic. I said, so what's the difference, But nonetheless, y'all artistic in different ways, special, But nonetheless, my point of it is, man, he was just trying to figure out, man, how to reconnect and make what he does reach the next generation. And I thought that was important, because John knows the history on that. Here it is, somebody who, man, we've been probably disconnected for at least a few years now. And for that moment in time we spent together, to be important to the point where he finds himself trying to figure life out, to come back to say, you know what, I got to make sure my life is more purposeful. So I need help in that, is basically what he was asking me. And that means a lot. That means a lot. All right, now let me jump back to the lesson, if you don't mind. Jeff, you mentioned something that I'm trying to correct. and it's obvious when we see the lifestyle of disciples, when we see the lifestyle of disciple makers, one thing stands out is they repeat a lot. So immediately the assumption is repeating becomes the goal. it's the most obvious activity or the most obvious task, but we have to remind ourselves it's not the goal. It's a process that we see along the way, but it is so obvious that casually we'll say repeating, and we often done. I've done that for a number of years. I've emphasized that for a number of years, but now I'm trying to take us past the purpose of repeating to see what the goal is for that activity. All right, and so I want to review our truths now, and I want to remind us of something that we learned in the past. All right, so anybody remember the truths we covered?
One was repeating 100 times is only memorization. It's not internalization.
Yes, yes. And so that's something to think about, because that's a huge accomplishment. But also we got to remember the 100 times our ears have to hear this, the 100 times was just metaphor. It was actually done at times when you sit back and think about my teacher, my rabbi, my rabbi repeating a lesson. I'm always there. The group is asking questions about it. He's always repeating it. And again, in their culture, it was a culture of repetition. So they actually did it, but it was still metaphoric in a sense. All right. So 100 times only equals memorization. And we ought to put that only in all caps and bold letters in our notes, because it really emphasizes that it's just what? Somebody remember what it is?
It's the minimal.
It's the minimum. And how do we describe it?
It's normal.
Yeah, normal diligence. And that's the key. The key thing is the word diligence, but putting that right next to 100 times or memorization. We do that a lot in our culture. Memorization was important. We developed cue cards, and we put these in our pocket, and every time I take a break, I pull it out and I say it and I recite it so I can memorize. That's how we learn to memorize scripture, But memorization isn't the goal. All right. It's good to memorize it, but let me get past that. So that's the key insight is that's just normal diligence. All of that effort it takes for us to memorize something, the emphasis is it's just normal. It's a normal way of life, and it should be for us. The question is it? Is it really? And we got work to do if it's not. Some of us get down on having to repeat the lesson. Some of us don't like reviewing the video. The reason is, and mentally, it's like, man, I sat through this live. Why do I need to review when I sat through live and I'm a great note taker? Some of us, even while we're listening, we say, I heard this before. Watch this. Why would I take notes again? But that's the normal subconscious of human beings. So we got to get beyond that so we can develop into these special type of learners that they were. All right. It was normal diligence. All right. Anybody remember another truth or point under this?
No reward. It was just the task. It was minimal, and it has a byproduct.
Yeah. Or it is the byproduct. It is the byproduct. But it's normal. It's a normal diligence, so there's no reward. If I do something that causes me to express or exert great effort internally, I feel like somebody ought to acknowledge it and give me some kind of appreciation for doing it. And this is the fear. If I did that, you wouldn't go beyond. And that's, I believe, this is God speaking to us, because I can't reward you for doing that. God can. But God is saying that's normal diligence. Watch now. Danny, I think you mentioned this word earlier. God said, why would I reward you for being obedient to something you're supposed to obey anyway? It's about obedience. All right. Normal diligence is normal obedience. It ain't nothing special yet. But in our culture, it is, because we're so far beyond or so far behind being this type of person. But what if God says, this is the way I intended to create impact through your life? All right. What if this is his way? All right. And so we got to go beyond. So we talked about 100 times only equals memorization. We talked about 100 times was normal diligence. We talked about there's no reward yet for repeating 100 times. And we talked about repeating memorization is simply a byproduct along the way. It's a byproduct to the goal. All right. So it's a byproduct. All right. Anybody remember the second point?
Hey, baby girl.
John, you better put it on mute.
Yeah.
Case what I wrote down is 100 plus times. Repeating 100 plus times is equal internalization. And then whatever repetition it takes is what the disciple does to internalize the lesson.
One more time, Chris. Thanks.
Repeating 100 plus times is equal to internalization. And kind of the explanatory note that I had taken down with that is whatever repetition it takes is what the disciple does to internalize the lesson.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah. And so internalization happens beyond the 100 plus. All right. So beyond the memorization, once I memorize it, I got to know the work ain't done. I can't stop, but I have to continue doing what I've done to get here, because I'm almost to the goal. I'm on my way to accomplishing the goal, which is internalizing it. I want to internalize. I want to become a part of the way I think, the way I believe. All right, and respond or express itself in my faithfulness. Come on, Brother Rob.
Yeah, could I try and relate this to, if I hire somebody in a business somewhere and I got a job description, I don't expect them to come back. If they've done a really good job meeting that job description, then they've done their job, and I just pay them the expected pay. So if I look at a reward, it's kind of the above and beyond your normal pay, then, and I'm trying to relate that to if the expectations that we're talking about are kind of our job description, and I'm just meeting the expectations of what the disciple should be, then there's really not, I shouldn't expect extra rewards. I shouldn't expect you know, I'm not even sure I could describe what a above and beyond disciple result would look like. So how do we take that expectation, and I'm trying to see, can I be better than what I am? That should be a given. And am I meeting the full job description of a disciple? Then what does reward really mean then? I can't really do more than just what it says. I'm just struggling with the what that expectation should look like.
Yeah. I think I have a clear explanation that I'll try to give. And and I'll come back, but I'll speed up a little bit to get to what your question is asked. So let's walk through this process. So memorization, there's no reward expected. It's just normal diligence. It's just my job. And when I do my job, I get a normal wage in life, right? But what do we do with that wage? It ain't extra. I earned it. I work for it. I take care of my responsibilities and I invest back into my life, or it's there to provide for my basic needs. All right. But repeating beyond that takes me to another level of internalizing a message, right? It becomes the way I think, the way I trust, the way I behave, my attitude, it inflates or infects my attitude, and then therefore it projects itself into my faithfulness, which creates a habit. Now it's habitual. It's just something that I do. Nobody has to ask me to wake up to go to work. It's what I do. So I look forward to it because it's a part of my life. Matter of fact, when I don't do it, I feel something wrong. I feel a void because it's a habit, and I notice if I'm not doing it. And that's kind of where God wants us to get to in our study habits, right? If I'm not studying, he wants it to feel like it's something missing. There's a void. But it's still not the goal, but it is a major accomplishment along the way. So I accomplished a lot, I've done a lot, but when I think about the goal, which is transformation, transform, and new character is produced. And this is what God says rewards are according to Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through 30. He looks over and he says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord." All right. So that's the reward, is to be called faithful, to be found doing what God expects with your life. So unfortunately, there is no immediate gratification in this life. The gratification is when I see God face to face, he'll look at me and say, he was someone who I could count faithful. That's the hope and the reward. So in this life, the reward is not found today. However, when I see transformation, I have hope of that reward. I have confidence that God will see a faithful person that I could confidently hope that I will be rewarded. And that's kind of my faith, and that is there true transformation to testify? Now, let me take it beyond that. I remember Brother Herb in his last days. It happened all of a sudden. Matter of fact, we were planning to go to Alexandria, Louisiana. Me, him, Sue, our wives, and we were planning this trip for a while with Keith Logan, and his family. And all of a sudden, Miss Judy calls, and basically, Herb is at a state where he can't remember. And so now that goes to, just him, eventually being hospitalized, coming back home. Long story short, people were going over, talking to him, trying to really, hopefully, prayerfully, that he would snap out of it. But I remember a glimpse of what he said to somebody, and basically it was a confirmation that whatever this is, I'm at peace with my end. Watch this, because of you. And maybe You know, a week or so after that, he passes away, right? And basically that was his reward, is that he was so confident that he had invested all he had in life into another individual, he could die in peace and be satisfied with that being his reward. And so that's what I think we have to look forward to, is the investment into the next person, and look back and say, you know what? I've actually walked along an individual who I've deposited all I have to invest in life into that individual. And that individual is actually living it out, doing it. That's a reward in itself. And I think that's the reward these types of individuals should look for, is, do we have someone we can look at and say that about and die in peace with, knowing that that's my satisfaction. That's the reward. You know, that's the biggest gratitude I think we can have as a spiritual human being in life, is to look at somebody else's life and say, you know what, man, they've been all that I hope someone could become. So yeah, does that, I don't know if that helped or not, Robert, or confused it more. So yeah.
I'll comment if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Coming on these calls on these Friday mornings and Sunday mornings and watching you guys, I've never seen myself much of a student. I've always kind of gotten away off of personality. I'm always curious, but watching you, Pastor KOC, and coming on here, watching all of you gentlemen, all you guys, every one of you, I could name every one of you, have really been a part of this journey. I can truly say that I feel like I'm becoming something like you, Mr. Donald. And I'm just grateful this morning to be here and to be able to say that and be here and just, I don't know, my heart is filled with gratitude because I see the power of reproduction. And that's the real spirituality here, you know, and loving these brothers and being here and watching the way you do this. I used to think, you know, preaching was a bullhorn on the street, hollering and screaming at people. I used to feel like it was, you know, the emotion and all of that. But now I realize it's slowing down, learning the text. Sometimes I wish I could be as studious as Jeff, John. Well, I mean, you say that, but I sometimes wish I do. You know what I mean? We all make those comparisons. So I just want to say thank you, Pastor KOC, for being a model that, I mean, man, you've come in my life. I didn't do married or counseling when I got married. I've been married 5 years now. And watching you calm, you're steady, you're consistent. I mean, I just love it, brother. And I just want to thank all of y'all. And Danny, I'm so glad to see you. I could just kiss you, but I won't kiss you.
That'd be good. That'd be good.
You know, I could echo those same things that Fred that said. But I'm going to pick on Danny Graham too, if you don't mind, Danny. We had a gathering one time together, and you made a statement that I still remember. You said, you know what, guys? We all going to have to attend each other's funeral one day. And you said, that's how important y'all are to me. And I looked at you, I said, that man really do think that much of me. That if I die, he gonna have to stop what he doing and attend my funeral. And I never forgot. Did you remember that, Danny?
Yeah, and I did mean that. I mean, I'm going to attend your funeral if
I go before you, yeah.
If you go before I do, yeah.
Right.
Hey, and be honest, Danny.
Somewhere where I can. Yeah, I'm gonna be there unless God permits me to.
Yeah, and let's be honest, Danny. You hope he do.
Let's keep it real, Casey. Let's keep it real. Yeah. But the bottom line is that's the love that we have for each other. And that came from the love that you have shown us down through the years, Casey, that you have for us. So I have no other words but to say, like, I want to be like you, like Fred said. I didn't have the peace and calm that you have. I had a big mouth and a loud mouth, and I was able to scare people with my mouth. I can't fight, but I can scare you, right? And my loud boss would just scare you that you would say, man, if this guy is bad as his bark, he'll tear me up. But that's a bark. But I stopped barking loud, and I just became calm. And now when I talk to people, I make them see what they didn't see by being calm. Because people would come to me and they'll try to just take every scripture and turn it around. But I'm so calm now. So I reckon that's all I got to say, but it's just a blessing to be on this call. Let me put it that way. That's the bottom line.
Appreciate you, man. Let me ask a couple of questions. All right. So why do you think the rabbis did not reward someone who repeated 100 times on? Why would we think that?
Well, my first thought was because that was normal diligence. That was just average. That wasn't nothing special in the eyes of the rabbi.
Okay. All right, good. Any other thoughts?
Well, it would die. It would die. If all I had was the memorization of 100 times, at some point, we're at the end of that rope. But if it's internalized and becomes a part of me so that I'm passing down what I think and it becomes beliefs and attitudes and faithfulness, that's a different story. I have now increased my towing capacity.
Yeah. Good stuff. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's got to be more than the act of doing the work. If it doesn't change you and there's not obedience behind it, you just, it doesn't seem like that's going to change you or anybody else. If it's just a rote act of memorization. If it doesn't change how you live and what you do and how you interact with people. Getting back to that obedience again, if it's not changing the way you walk it out, it's not doing much.
Yeah. Rich, you had a comment?
I was going to say, I relate it back to when we get our performance evaluations annually, we don't get rewarded for activities. So doing something is not what we get evaluated against. It's what is the outcome. So I guess if eternal life is knowing one true God and Jesus Christ whom he sent, then the outcome he expects is like you referred to in Matthew 25, is that you've done something with it. You've multiplied what I guess your experience with Christ, and that know is not like just I know facts about Jesus or I know facts about God. Like you were saying, it's not about memorization, it's about objectively knowing him. How's that knowing him personally, and how does that personal relationship cause you to multiply to another who doesn't have that relationship? So it's more about outcomes. It's not about activity.
Yeah. And although repeating 100 times is a type of outcome, it falls in line to the activity of the most important or expected outcome. It wasn't the expected outcome. It has to happen along the way. So what a rabbi does, a wise rabbi, recognizes and says, you know what? Watch this. We're progressing. He acknowledges the progress and he's trying to motivate it. But however, if I reward you, guess what I do? I may enable the motion or the momentum of the progress. So I don't reward yet, most likely. And again, we're assuming we're having a conversation to internalize and process this as well, because 100 times is important. And I realize 100 times don't exist in our culture. It just don't. It's not, it don't. You know, we don't see it a lot. Some people do. I got a friend, one was on her, a mutual friend, man, been out talking with him, and he was a lineman in his day. He's retired, but you know, he often told me about the repetition that they had to produce in their apprenticeship because of the severity of the outcome. Like, hey, you know, when the power shuts down, we often look at MLG and W, whoever our power company is, but there's huge risk. Some of us won't even go near a light switch when it goes out. I'm calling my electrician. You know, but what he emphasized was he realized the importance of what they were trying to teach them and repeating what it is they were supposed to learn. And they made them do it over and over until they did it exactly the way they were being trained and taught. And when they saw that they could actually do it, watch this, in the most severe moments, in the most critical times, in emergencies, it would produce. And so it reminds me of something. We hear it often with I've never been in the military, but I can imagine it's similar, or it was a similitude in the military. They were respected or expected to repeat things. And what elite military people say, we don't rise to the occasion. We do what, Will?
We fall back.
Fall to our training.
Fall back to our training.
Fall to our training. You know, and so that's what it does. So I can't reward you for the training process that's expected, because if I do, you'll think you've arrived. You may not press past it, and you never reach the goal. All right, so let's keep pressing. All right, let's not look for the pat on the back, but let's move beyond this, right? Because it's normal diligence. It's the baseline, right? Baseline is just the initial beginning. Come on.
Casey, did you tell us that the rabbi, he wasn't concerned about the reward, because the reward comes from the Father, not the rabbi?
True. Yep. And again, the reward may not come in this life. God ain't gonna give me all the funds I need for my mission trip because I'm doing it. That ain't what I'm expecting, and I can't expect that, you know, because everybody else ain't. It's the obedience piece. I'm looking forward to the satisfaction of what's going to happen in the life to come, right? And I got to keep living it out in this life, right? So yeah, and ultimately, you are my reward. That's what Paul said in Philippians, my joy and my crown, right? When I saw, and that's what I truly feel when I have my conversations with Soup. Our relationship has evolved over time, but when we talk, you know, I just hear the deep admiration, and he often finds a way to say it. Man, I'm proud of you. Man, I'm proud of you, and I can sense that's a joy and a reward for him to see someone live out in obedience what it is he's been trying to transfer. So come on, Jeff.
Well, I just remember something that Dr. Mack said to me. You know, it was not until his last 7 years of life that he came to grips with disciple making. Yeah. You know, he'd done everything you could possibly do he was a true, diligent, faithful churchman. He was on every committee. He was chairman of the deacons. He went on mission trips. He did everything that you would think of. But he told me, he says, when I realized that I could invest in men and see the light go off or come on above their head, there was no better reward for me than to see that in this life. In other words, he said, there is no greater joy than to see men that you're investing in go, I got it.
Yes.
And I to this day remember him telling me he was so excited. Sometimes he would call me and he couldn't get out the words. He was so excited.
You know, go ahead.
Go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
You know, I think, like you just said, I think that most men have trouble. I don't know whether we submitting to you, Houston, or submitting to a rabbi. I think in this culture that we live in, most men don't see you as a representative of God. I'm not saying we don't, I do, but they wouldn't want to say, well, I'm gonna learn from this man. That become a problem in America. So how do you address that? Can you just get? I mean, I know you don't have the power as God, but you are a representative of God. Would you say that or not?
Yeah, I think God created any follower. We look at Genesis 1:26. That's what he intended Adam to be, the likeness of Christ, which is what we call it now, but a representative of God, which is what he created us to be. And our transformation, salvation, causes us to salvage the unlikeness of Christ, to give us the potential to replicate Christ in our life from that point on, so we can represent him and represent God once again in the way God intended it when he created us, right? I can't change how the world views me. I continue to live out the way God expects me. God, I'll change people around me. That's kind of where my satisfaction lies, right? You know, so yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And that's where my hope resides, right? Is I just trust that moment, you know. So yeah. And it's the greatest accountability, right? Man, I can't tell you how much thinking about what I'm doing, the people who God has shown me I have influence with, helps me when I'm weak. Because we all have weak moments in life, whatever that weakness is, right? And it's like, oh, I got a greater reason than this, right? And so thank you, Lord. And I move past that, you know. Man, there may be we all have it, but the challenge is if you ponder it for more than a second, you in trouble, right? You remember those seconds in life that you pondered it, but you moved past it, because there was some folks I wanted to just, man, give them the best cussing I could. But I moved past real quick. Sometimes, you know, hey, we give in. But sometimes I move past. But that's just an example, you know. And so, hey, you know, man, there's other things in life, you know. Man, we're men humanly. I can't stop my eyes from seeing somebody attractive. But that second doesn't need to last beyond the second, or I'm in trouble. I got to move past. I got to think about my wife. I got to think about people I'm accountable for. And I got to think about the testimony of my failure. And so it moves past it. And I was sharing with my young man, they call them YNs now, my youngin', and he says, hey, I'm struggling on figuring out how to date women. And I said, man, I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I said, the only advice I have for you is don't go out if you think you're gonna struggle. You ain't strong enough to resist. So he said, what you mean? I said, run from it. If this ain't the right relationship, run away from it. So yeah.
You know, Case, that reminds me of the Martin Luther once said, you know, the birds you know, the bird's going to fly over your head, but they don't have to make a nest in your hair.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 And that's why internalizing truth becomes important. It is, I can't, there's a scripture I learned a long time ago. It says, if I build again that which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. And in those moments of weakness, you know, God just for a long time, he reminded me of that in my times past as a real young Christian. And I said, okay, let's move past it, you know, because I sense that if I do this, it'll build something that I've already went through that God destroyed. So let me move past it, you know, let me not entertain it. So yeah. All right. Now, one other question. This is what I believe this is helping us with. How can someone repeat a teaching perfectly and still not understand? How can someone repeat a teaching perfectly and still not understand?
Probably happens a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
Wasn't that the trouble with the Pharisees?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yes. Big time. Yeah, big time. And guess what? That's the whole purpose of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is saying, I've watched and heard over time, and I've listened to our forefathers and ancestors repeat this stuff, and unfortunately, there's an era of misunderstanding still, not understanding what God truly meant by this. You know, some of those instances, if you go back and look at Jewish literature, and you look at what Jesus taught, you're like, oh, they got this. This aligns perfectly. But you look at some of this other stuff and you see what Jesus taught, and he's like, yeah, I see where they missed it. But I see they were on their way. At some point, they got satisfied and just kind of settled in because maybe they just didn't understand deeply. But here's Jesus trying to help us understand what's been repeated and misunderstood. So, yes. Yeah.
You know, Jesus was more in line with the Pharisees than he was in the other sect. I mean, the Pharisees were just, they just didn't have the love, you know, the ones that he called out. But, you know, just the fact that the Pharisees were so particular. I mean, just the fact that they would invite him into their home for dinner, they recognized that he was, you know, he knew I mean, they considered him one of them out. It seems like the way I read it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree. And also Jesus was trying to ensure that the overall intent of character building and transformation was involved and not just repetition. Because I believe that's what a lot of the Pharisees settled in on, is being recognized for being able to repeat it, but not necessarily understand it because it wasn't a part of their lifestyle when it came down to it. And we saw that a lot. It's like, okay, well, where's your heart transformation?
Wow,
that's what God is about.
That's huge, Keith.
Yeah. Heart transformation. All right. Another lesson I've learned, you know, in my work life, in my daily life, and people come and ask me, they ask me about, you know, interactions and confrontations with people when you're seeing someone doing what you expressly felt like they should know to do, and they're accountable to you for doing it. That's a work life, right? A I'm a supervisor. I have subordinates. My subordinates are supervisors and have subordinates, and they come with the complaint. Man, I said they in my office, and I'm trying to be the arbitrator of it. And I've told them this several times, and they should know it. Didn't I say this? Didn't I say this? And I'm like, hey, you missing the point. And I'm actually talking to my supervisor. And I said, because it's not about if you said it, that's important. And what I was trying to express to him is you're appealing to his will or her will. Communicate more where when you say it, it appeals to their conscience. And you won't have to be in here talking about whether or not they did it or not, because you appeal to the will and people reject the will. I want to speak to the conscience of the person. So when I ask them, it's a conviction and not an indictment, you know. And then we usually see, you know, adjustments after that. So yeah. So how do we appeal to conscious beings instead of the willfulness of beings is the question. And that's what stops us from understanding these lessons, right? That's how I can repeat it perfectly, because it was done in willfulness without the conscious thought. And that's what happens when I internalize it. Let me give us a sign of how I know I've internalized it. Because subconsciously it happens. Right? When it happens subconsciously, it's internalized. Right? So yeah. All right. Appreciate you, Rob. Thanks, man. All right. Let's keep going. All right. All right. Let's continue to review. All right. Good questions. Because what I'm trying to do is to help us not want to settle for repeating 100 times. Because if I reward myself or honor myself for doing it, I've received my reward already in this life. I have no reward in the next life to look forward to. All right. So I want to make sure that in my mind, I'm not satisfied with. I have to make sure 100 times is not satisfying to me. Because if 100 times becomes satisfying, there's a possibility I may not go beyond that. Right? So yeah. All right. So repeating 100 plus times or repeating 100 times or more equals internalization. I've made it a habit. Now it has become a part of it. I've become a part of it. All right. Now I've joined myself with truth. And is what Chris put in there, you know. So I don't study to know, I study to become. But that's a process. 100 times it takes that along the way to get there. But I have to go beyond memorization to get there. When I memorize it, okay, now what I should say is I've memorized it. Now I have the tools to accomplish the goal. Now I've developed the tools to accomplish the goal. Now let me go beyond. Let me find ways to repeat this in life. Let me find ways to repeat this to others. Now let me have conversations about it and processing it, because that's where the questions comes in, and it causes us to wrestle. Think about what those two questions we asked earlier did, right? That was a way of processing 100 times. And that caused us to internalize it even more. So maybe I learned to ask these questions at that moment. And I listened to my group process it and wrestle with it. You know what happens to you? You process it even deeper. So yeah. All right. So and we talked about this, and this is something, it increases our capacity. I didn't have the capacity to do this before. I didn't have the stamina to do this before. I didn't. I remember me. I remember when I didn't have the stamina. But I remember when I think back about the repetition part and doing it over and over and over, and then I look back and be like, you know what? It's not hard for me to do this because I've built this capacity or this stamina in me to do it. So that's what the repetition of 100 times is going to accomplish as well. It enlarges our capacity, all right, of learning, all right. A lot of times I can't learn complicated things because I hadn't practiced in this area enough to learn the complicated things. And watch this, when you look back over what we've learned so far in this lesson, next month, you will see it doesn't really take that much time to cover this, and it ain't a whole lot of information as much as it felt like in the moment, right? It's not a lot of information because it was new information that I was trying to internalize and process. And once I processed it, it's like, okay, wow, you know, that was just the tip of the iceberg, but it increased my capacity for the next connected point that's going to take me deeper in my understanding. All right, if that makes sense. So our goal is to get beyond the habit, right? That's embodiment. You know, that's the truth number 2, is I want to embody this. You know, I want to, embodiment equals the halakha, right? When I embody it, people see it lived out in my lifestyle at home. People see it lived out in my lifestyle at work, in my leisure, even in my leisure time, when I'm relaxing and enjoying myself, it's lived out, right? So people see that now I'm a part of it, and it's a part of me, and I'm representing God in all these areas, which is what God created us to be in the first place. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, he said, let us make man in our image. Literally, it means a representative figure. So God created you and I to represent him in life. That's the only reason why he placed authority in us. All right? If not, the authority is distorted and it'll be misused, which often happens. Quick reminder. Some of you remember the Spoudazo lesson, and we talked about that briefly, I think. But when we think about Spoudazo really being the mentality someone applies to studies, now we can see this process of memorization and internalization happening in our studies through the Spoudazo efforts. You know, to use speed means to do it without delay. I'm getting over this mental barrier that I want to get to the point of memorization and repeating 100 times, but as soon as I procrastinate or I think too hard about it, it doesn't happen. So I just need to do it without delay. And the 100 times will process itself through my life. All right. And I move beyond it. The other thing is I got to simply say, you know what, if I'm going to do this and beyond this, I just simply have to make the effort. It's a mentality, you know. Everything starts in my mind first before it portrays or responds or projects itself in my life. To be prompt, when will I do this? Have I designated an appointed place and time to go beyond 100 plus times? It don't happen if I haven't. So, because it's strategic. So let me at least, how do I do it? This is my preparation. I know I'll get a chance to repeat this from memory when I go out to the prison on next Thursday, John. So if you want to go. But long story short, I know I get a chance to repeat some of the lessons again. Because when I go in there, we have a shorter time. And these men won't be able to follow me home and pick up the phone and ask me about it. And a lot of times I don't have time to take all these, you know, loads of notes. So I get a chance to talk about it on the ride. I get a chance to process it the day before. And so I'm repeating, I get it, and I'm strategic about it. I know when I want to do this. So I designate the time and the place for it. I know early mornings on certain days at 3:30, I'm going to get up and review until 4:30, right? So I've designated appointed time and appointed places. Are we doing that? Or we think casually, I'm just gonna pick it up and do it. So yeah. All right. The other part of it is when I do it, am I putting my whole heart and soul into this? Am I sincere when I do this? My mind, my body, my soul is invested into this. So, and then also, am I persistent? Am I persistent enough to the application of it? Right? To the point where I complete the undertaking of the task. So I got to be persistent. The other piece of it is, do I recognize and accept and embrace the fact that this is work? So it's mental anguish, physical anguish attached to it. Ain't that the truth? If I do something 100 plus times, in my mind, that hurts. When I think about it, it hurts. And then again, I got to know that the discovery at the end of this is the goal. That's the reward. Is the discovery, new information, new truths. When I do this, it invites me for a moment of discovery, to accept new truth. So that's that's spoudazo, to use speed, to make an effort, to be prompt, to be sincere, to give due diligence, to labor and toil, and to endeavor. So we're already applying. We're applying this. No wonder God was so wise and strategic in giving us these verses that are attached to these deep meanings, because it's accomplishing his goal. This is part of our preparation. Every scripture prepares us for this. But we have to internalize those and understand how they apply in life. All right. Make sense? Comments, questions, or thoughts? Put this in the chat. I think we went over this before. Not. Put it in the chat. Oh, you had. All right. I think we went over this already. All right. Now, I said this before, but we talked about it, is the goal is to get from repetition to internalization, which equals a habit that causes us to embody it, that leads to transformation. Transformation is the goal. Changed lifestyle in this area. Can't change my whole life in one moment, but in this area, change lifestyle. And that's transformation. That is the reward, because you get something new out of that. You do something different. That's the reward. Is that I cause myself to begin to live differently. And the results of that will bless you in this life. All right? It will. It will. Some of us receive higher wages because of it. Some of us receive promotions because of it. New job opportunities because of it. But so those are byproducts of blessings as well. Because the transformation, this is what someone said a long time ago. Seeing differently is a byproduct of change. So when I know I see differently, I can expect change will happen. Change will come. But when change does happen, it creates new opportunities for me. All right? I can't stop new opportunities from happening because of the change. All right? So therefore, at that time, somebody may give a donation because they see change in my life and they're willing to help and support. That's a byproduct of the blessing. All right? So yeah, but transformation is the goal, and it is the ultimate reward. All right? It is the goal, and it's the ultimate reward. Now, let me drop this nugget, because I'm not sure I said this before. I want to make sure I say it. And this was part of Jefferson's conversation with me. So it has meaning. See, we've been around, Jeff started off saying it, we've been around so many people who excels in repetition. But someone who merely repeats and does not internalize has missed the point. Someone who merely repeats and does not internalize has missed the point. See, I've been around people, once they got to the point of being able to repeat it, they were satisfied with it and they moved away. They went on about what it is, and then you talk to them, they say, I got it now. So I'm good. That's why I didn't come back, because I got it. But they failed to internalize it, so they missed the point. They missed the point because they can't explain it to the point someone else needs to understand it and embrace it. Because I didn't internalize. All right. So yeah, so I missed the point. So I got to make sure that that's not my goal. Because if I only repeat, if I merely repeat, I hadn't created internalization or transformation. So therefore I missed the point. Therefore I missed the point. All right. Comments, questions, or thoughts so far? All right, for the next 20 minutes, I want to talk about what the rabbis actually cared about. All right. I want to talk about what the rabbis actually cared about. And what this will identify is signs of a faithful disciple. This is what the rabbis actually concerned themselves about. This is what they truly cared about. And if you think about it, it'll align with what God truly cares about. All right. You know, God created this culture intently with the sole purpose of giving them an introduction to who he was. He created this culture, and in giving them an introduction to who he was, it started off with giving them some of his words. And they began to call those the commands of God. And inside of those commands were revealed teachings. And those teachings began to describe who God truly is and his character and what he expected in his life. And therefore, it was what he expected in our lives. But sometimes the goal of those giving those words was to cause that individual or those individuals to become one with God through internalization and transformation of his words. I become one. That's why I say I become a part of it, because I was supposed to become one with God, word in his word, which caused me to become one with him, because he's an inanimate object. He's an abstract being. So I can't physically connect with him, but I can through words spiritually. All right. So the rabbi, so when we think about it, repetition leads us to better quality, but the rabbi's concern was never just the quantity of it, meaning 100. His concern wasn't the 100. That's why it's a metaphor. It leads to quality, but he wasn't necessarily satisfied and concerned with the quantity or the count, but transformation. His concern was transformation. The leading, something that would lead to the goal and the outcome. Chris mentioned that. I understand the task. I appreciate the process. But if you complete the task in the process and we don't achieve the outcomes, I got to shut this down. That's what happens to the businesses and companies in places and nonprofits. It's like, hey, we're not accomplishing the outcome, so why are we doing it? you know? So transformation. So that means I need to know signs that point me that point me to identifying whether or not transformation is actually happening. Right? So yeah. So I'll say it in a different way. All right. Again, the rabbi's concern was never quantity alone, but transformation. All right. The rabbi's concern was never quantity alone, but transformation. The rabbi's concern was never quantity alone, but transformation, for those who are taking notes. The rabbi's concern was never quantity alone, but transformation. The rabbi's concern was never quantity alone, but transformation. Now, let me say that in a different way, and I'll ask a question. Are those disciples being transformed and teaching transformation to the next generation? That was the concern. Are those disciples being transformed, and are those disciples teaching transformation to the next generation? That's multiplication. I'll say it again. That's how I know that disciple multiplied, because I see transformation and I see their intentionality to teach transformation to the next generation. That's what Soup says he's proud of. He doesn't say it that way, but when he looks at me and we had this conversation, I know that's what he's talking about. I see the change in you because he's known me for 18 plus years. He's watched me continue to be persistent and grow, and he's seen things change in my life, and he's saw the intentionality of projecting and teaching change to the next generation. Are those disciples being transformed and teaching transformation to the next generation? When you see that, that's a sign of a faithful disciple. That's a sign. When I see transformation in them, and when I see them teaching transformation to the next generation, that's a true sign of a faithful disciple. And it shows me what the rabbi's concern truly was. That's what the rabbi cared about. All right. Comments, questions? Make sense? All right.
Hey, so you can't really teach transformation. You can just be transformed, and hopefully somebody else sees that and is being transformed. This change of heart is not a change of outward activity. It's a change of inward.
Yes.
Yes. That's kind of what you're saying in the transformation part.
Yes, yes. And the only way I can notice it is be a part of their life and watch them make choices in life.
Yeah.
And understand when I see this over and over, I see it. I notice it. All right. So yeah. Let me say it in another way. All right. Four phases of transformation. Let me say it in another way. All right. Maybe this will help. The first phase of anything is inception. It's the beginning of it all. It's the inception stage, you know. But there's a consciousness in the inception stage I don't realize I possess. And it's all negative. It's exciting, but negative in a sense. In the inception stage, the reality of it is I'm unaware of what I'm aware of. I'm unaware of what I'm aware of. Because I've never been here. It's true. I didn't know this was going to be here. So I was unaware of it even existing. So I'm in it, though. But it is exciting. It is exciting. But I'm unaware of I'm unaware. So now let me explain what being unaware of what I'm aware of. This is what we describe it as. Unconsciously incompetent. And that's what we don't like. But that's the truth about the inception stage and anything. I'm unconsciously incompetent. And I just had my first realization of that. So immediately the excitement fades when I realize what it truly is about something that's important. Maybe it's my first day at work, and they're gonna pay me to do this. But here I am realizing I have a degree, I have a resume with experience, but watch this. I've never done this here before the way they want it done. But this is what they trust. You have enough training and knowledge to figure it out. To be persistent. So what does it take? It takes the 100 times to get past the inception stage. I got to figure out what it is they want me to do. I got to figure out how they want it done. I got to figure out the process they usually do it. And I need to know the results they usually expect. And now I just got to get to the repetition piece. But the realization is, in the inception stage, I'm unconsciously incompetent. And that hurts. That hurts. Psychologists call that the deception stage. All right. Psychology, I'm sorry, no, I'm wrong. No, because it moves us into the deception stage. That's the inception stage. That's inception. All right, let me move past. Now, when I move past and I realize that, and I don't give up in that moment, and so that means I'm in the process of repeating 100 times because I didn't give up in that moment. But I move into another phase if I continue the repetition. And what I realize is now I'm consciously incompetent. Because I'm repeating this, but I still don't understand it. But I am repeating it. I'm in the motion of it. I'm involving myself in tasks and activities about it, but I still don't understand it. So I'm unconsciously, I'm consciously incompetent. Now I know what I don't know. At first, I didn't know what I didn't know. Now I know what I don't know, and it makes me conscious about what I don't know. This is the deception stage because this is where if I didn't quit in the inception stage, you best doggone believe I'm walking away now. Because I want to go back to what's familiar. I don't like this uncomfortableness of being cognitive of what I don't know. It's uncomfortable. You know what it takes to stay? Jesus' greatest character as a human being. He was 100% man and 100% God, but his greatest character as a human being was what?
I would say patient.
That's
not right. Okay.
It's close. I can see it, but I think it was something else projected in his humanity above patience. Philippians.
A discernment?
No, to be a human being, what did he first have to do before you and I met him?
Perseverance.
I don't know. Perseverance.
Humility.
He had to embrace humanity. What? God in the flesh? Human being? I got to take what I am and who I am, and I have to humble myself to be a lowly servant in the human's body. Body and the humanity that I created. It takes humility, humbleness. That's his greatest human quality. And guess what? That's the quality that causes us not to flee the deception stage. See, that's the quality that causes me to continue to repeat 100 times, although everybody else says I sound like a parrot. See, that's the quality that I knew I had to get past when everybody said, man, you're just trying to be like Sue. Like, man, you missed the mark. That's what I'm thinking. You don't even understand. Yeah. You don't even understand. But guess what? I had to accept and embrace the humbleness and walk in humility for 18 plus years to get past that piece so people can see the transformation. And now when they see the transformation, they're like, oh, I messed up. I left too soon. Real conversations, y'all. Y'all don't understand. In 2011, I'm sitting at the table with these men that walked away because they were smarter than me. They were more intelligent than me. You know, and so they felt like they had, man, I repeated that last night. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got this. I know what he's saying now. It's like repeating it wasn't the goal, man. That wasn't the goal. Because they didn't know it was about internalizing. They didn't know it was about transformation. So are you the same person when we started this? Basically, they was like, yeah, you know the difference? I got new information. I just got new information. But humility caused me not to flee the deception stage like they did. Because they were consciously incompetent of the outcome of transformation. They didn't realize it, but they were repeating it. So this is what happens in the deception stage. You know what I do again? I dig in and repeat. I put forth an effort. I persistent in the application to the undertaking. And I cycle through. And I cycle through. And you know what I said? I didn't know what the goal was, truthfully. But I said, it got to be something greater than this. So let me stay in this process until God reveals it. So I just remain humble with humility and obedient. And eventually God revealed the transformation, which was the goal. But I didn't flee the deception stage. Very important. So I'm unconsciously incompetent in the deception stage. In deception stage, I'm consciously incompetent. And if I continue to repeat beyond 100 plus times, I become consciously competent. It's a habit. It's internalized. I'm beyond the 100 plus because the quantity wasn't the problem or the issue. It was the internalization of it. So guess what? Now it's a part of me. It's a habit. I can't live it down. But you know what we do in our professionalism? This is what I tell my staff. I said, you know, we might need to end this. We might need to part ways. You might need to find you. I'll give you a process. I'll give you time to consider whether or not you want to be here and find another job. Because what I'm seeing right now is I don't think you understand what you're supposed to be doing. Because this is what I say. Not only should you be striving to be a professional, but if you were striving to become an expert, at least you would glance at professionalism. It'll bite you on the back or something. But you're not even striving for that. So I know it's time to part ways. And this is what I say to the people that I know should be there is, you're doing a great job at being a professional. Let's begin to strive to become an expert at this and watch something different happens in your life. All right? You can't stop rewards and promotions from happening. You can't stop the goals and the outcome from happening. That's our goal here. It's like, I kind of, what am I doing if I'm only looking for repetition? But I got to strive beyond that because I want to perfect this thing. I don't even know what perfection is. And spirituality is maturation. I mean, I'm going to get mature, more mature than I was before. More maturity happens in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. No wonder Proverbs taught us that. It's doing something for us internally, right? And so now I'm consciously competent, which is the goal, or accomplishment, but there's still more. There's still more. So those who are consciously competent, who continue to repeat the habits and the internalization, eventually they create, watch this, new identity. Transformation equals new identity. So when I go beyond being satisfied with consciously competence, I become unconsciously competent because it's a part of who I am. It's new character, new identity. That's transformation. I don't have to think about what I am when I am it, but I'm an expert at being it because I am it. That's new identity, y'all. And that's what God is adding to our lives, one area at a time, one scripture teaching at a time, carving out this identity. And eventually people look at me and say, man, he's different. He's different. He's not just different here, he's just different. Right? But it's a good different. He's better. So that's what this is doing, gentlemen. All right. Comments, questions, and thoughts.
Did my notes capture the 4 steps that I popped in the notes? Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competency.
Do it. Consciously incompetent. Yep, that's it. That is it. Yes, sir. That is it. Yeah. Now, the psychologists who created that never understood the spiritual thing we're learning. But it all comes from God. It all originated with God. Yeah.
So you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And what you don't know is what's costing you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that's all the reasons why we should be teachable.
Yes.
Trainable.
Yes.
And why we should keep repeating.
Yes.
And why we should never say, I heard that before.
Yes. Come on. That's the danger. When someone says that, y'all, you know how they used to say back in the day, they don't do it now because people don't have any conscience. But back in the day, when somebody said something that they knew that was against God, people were standing and move to the left because they think they're going to get struck by lightning. Y'all remember that? We don't do that no more because we not even conscious. But when someone says, I heard that before, you ought to move to the left or to the right. They're about to be struck by lightning, you know? Yeah, because they don't get it. And they don't get it. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This process ain't for them right now, you know? So, yeah. All right, man. I think that'll be a good stopping point for today. We'll pick back up next week.